votes are counted, the poll is closed, and we are ready to induct the class of 2026 into YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. There were a lot of votes that came in over the last month, and I think there will be a couple of surprises as we induct 11 true wrestling legends into our fan-voted Hall of Fame. This is our second year casting votes, and here is a collage of all the wrestlers voted into the Hall in 2025. This group, along with Bill Mercer and Mickey Grant, who went in with the Creators Award, made up the inaugural class. Now this year we begin with that award, which is one inductee I choose myself, but we are giving it a new name. I never really liked the name of the Creators Award, and just as the poll was closing this year, it dawned on me what I should do. The Creators Award will now be known as the Mercer-Grant Award, named in honor of the first recipients. It was a discussion about Bill Mercer that planted the seed of even having our own Hall of Fame. Bill Mercer and Mickey Grant were the key components to the birth of the Dallas territory of the NWA rebranding as World Class Championship Wrestling and changed the way pro wrestling was presented on television. That's what I wanted the Creators Award to be, making sure the people who may not necessarily have the global recognition for their contributions, but were important to the industry and now get their due. And I like the name a lot better. For the recipient of the award for the class of 2026, I had this gentleman in mind from the start, but I did have to come up with a backup because for a while it looked like he would be voted in anyway. As it turned out, others passed him with votes in the last month. So, our first inductee of 2026 and the Mercer-Grant Award recipient is George Hackenschmidt. George Hackenschmidt was one of professional wrestling's earliest global superstars, and could be considered the very definition of a pioneer in the business. Born August 1st, 1877 in the Russian Empire, what is now Tartu, Estonia, George displayed incredible athletic ability from a young age. Even before becoming a wrestler, he excelled in weightlifting, cycling, and track and field. George's remarkable combination of strength, speed, and agility earned him the nickname the Russian Lion, and by the turn of the 20th century, had become one of the most recognizable athletes in the world. Having already set world records in weightlifting, Hackenschmidt began his professional wrestling career in the late 1890s and quickly gained a reputation for dominating opponents across Europe. His powerful physique and technical skill drew fans to packed houses wherever he appeared, making him one of wrestling's first true international stars. On May 4, 1905, at Madison Square Garden in New York City, Hackenschmidt was the first wrestler to rightfully claim the title World Heavyweight Champion when he defeated the United States champion Tom Jenkins in 2 straight falls of best 2 out of 3 falls match. For 3 years, Hackenschmidt traveled the world defending his title against the likes of the terrible Turk Ahmed Madrali and European contenders like Jack Paulson, as he maintained an undefeated streak of almost mythical proportions. George finally lost the championship to American wrestler Frank Gotch in Chicago, sparking one of pro wrestling's first true rivalries. A rematch for the title at Chicago's Comiskey Park in 1911 drew 30,000 fans, a then record crowd that helped establish pro wrestling as a worldwide phenomenon. Outside the ring, Hackenschmidt was equally respected for his dedication to health and fitness, writing several books promoting strength training, physical culture, and healthy living. One of his most lasting contributions was the hack squat, an exercise that still bears his name and remains a staple in gyms around the world today. Hackenschmidt believed physical fitness was deeply connected to mental well-being, a thoughtful approach that set him apart from many of his contemporaries. While there was some controversy in the matches against Gotch, with Hackenschmidt claiming that dirty tactics were used and Gotch declaring he did nothing outside the rules, their rivalry elevated pro wrestling to a major spectator sport. Hackenschmidt would only wrestle sporadically after those matches, with lingering injuries slowing him down, but remained an admired figure in wrestling until his passing at the age of 90 in 1968. He is remembered as one of the greatest athletes of his era, and created a legacy that still endures more than a century after he first stepped into the ring. George Hackenschmidt, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Now on to the 10 wrestling personalities voted into YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame by the fans. We actually have a 2-way tie for 9th place to start things off. First up in that tie is legendary manager Playboy Gary Hart. One of the most influential personalities in pro wrestling through the 1970s and 1980s, Gary Hart took a different approach to his public persona than most managers of his time. Hart was more cerebral, using a sharp mind, an eerie charisma, and the ability to build unforgettable villains. Hart often came off as calm and collected until he wasn't. He could almost be forgotten at ringside until he found a way to interfere. There was nothing loud or flashy about Gary Hart, but at the end of a match, his presence was felt, usually to the detriment of the local babyface. Born Gary Richard Williams in Chicago, Illinois, Hart broke into pro wrestling in Chicago through his uncle, who was a booking agent for promoter Fred Kohler. Hart worked as an in-ring performer early in his career, moving to big-time wrestling based in Detroit and Western States Wrestling in Amarillo through the 1960s. It started to become clear his future in wrestling was as a manager and behind the scenes when he moved on to the Dallas territory of the NWA in 1967, though he would still appear as a wrestler sporadically. Hart was even a two-time American Tag Team Champion in Dallas, winning the title with the Spoiler in 1967 and 1968. Fans grew to love to hate Gary Hart, particularly in Dallas, where he feuded with local hero Fritz Von Erich and the Von Erich family for the better part of 20 years, as he managed talent like the Spoiler, Mark Lewin, Bruiser Brody, and the Great Kabuki. It wasn't all just for show, as Hart proved to have an incredible eye for talent, bringing in villains that were perfect for the role they needed, like King Kong Bundy and the Fabulous Freebirds. Hart also spent time as the booker in Dallas, ushering them into their most successful period, as the territory rebranded as World Class Championship Wrestling. Outside of World Class, Hart had successful runs in Florida, Georgia, and Mid-Atlantic, where his street-smart Chicago tough guy gimmick was heavily seasoned with truth, as he was a street-smart Chicago tough guy. Hart spurred a memorable feud between the Great Kabuki and Jimmy Valiant in Mid-Atlantic over the NWA Television Championship, which led to the Charlie Brown from Out of Town run after Valiant lost a loser leaves town match. Hart still occasionally got into the ring to wrestle as well, tagging with the likes of Kabuki and Ivan Koloff as they feuded with Angelo Mosca Sr. and Jr. Gary Hart passed away on July 16, 2008 at the age of 66, leaving behind a legacy of helping to shape one of the most successful eras of professional wrestling. While many fans may remember the larger-than-life characters he managed, those within the industry point to Hart as one of the greatest bookers and managers of all time. Hart created moments that still resonate with people today, using psychology and character development, proving the key to success in pro wrestling doesn't always have to be the wrestler in the ring. Gary Hart, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. In that tie with Gary Hart for 9th place is one of 3 former NWA World Champions going in with the class of 2026, the Lone Wolf, Barry Windham. A second-generation wrestler and the son of Blackjack Mulligan, Barry Windham was born July 4, 1960, in Sweetwater, Texas. Seemingly destined for greatness at an early age, Windham benefited greatly from having top stars on hand to help with training. Not only did his father head up that training, but multi-time NWA World Champion Harley Race played a huge part in his early development. Standing 6 foot 6 inches tall at 19 years old, Windham combined head-turning physical attributes with natural charisma and a smooth in-ring style. Early on, promoters across the country were seeing him as a future superstar. Primarily based in Florida early in his career, Windham held both the Florida Television Championship and the Florida Heavyweight Championship, as well as holding various tag team championships with various partners. His most notable partner was Mike Rotundo, who held the Florida version of the United States Tag Team Championship with Barry on 3 different occasions, later became Barry's brother-in-law, and went to Mid-Atlantic with Windham in 1984, where they caught the eye of the World Wrestling Federation. Known as the U.S. Express in the WWF and managed by Captain Lou Albano, Windham and Rotundo captured the WWF World Tag Team Championship in January 1985, when they defeated Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch for the belts. A long feud with Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik followed, which saw Windham and Rotundo drop the title to them briefly before regaining the belts. Windham was thrilling WWF fans. Unfortunately, a strange communication between Windham and Rotundo behind the scenes led to Windham returning to the NWA and Championship Wrestling from Florida. Windham moved on to Jim Crockett Promotions in 1986, where many people inside and outside the business believe he produced the best work of his career. Surrounded by top talent like Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Lex Luger, Ricky Steamboat, and Sting, Windham earned a reputation for delivering outstanding matches with a mix of technical skill and believable intensity. Windham added the icing on the cake with a shocking heel turn in 1988 when he became part of the Four Horsemen with Flair, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard. 5 years later, once again a babyface, Windham finally won the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Injuries would slow him down later in his career, but Barry Windham's legacy was already in place as one of the greatest all-around wrestlers of his generation. Windham's combination of size, speed, and effortless ring psychology made his matches must-see at the peak of his career and a joy to re-watch years after his retirement. Whether competing as a fan favorite or a villain, Barry Windham is remembered as one of the finest athletes ever to step inside the squared circle and continues to be appreciated today. Barry Windham, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. There is another two-way tie for 7th place in the poll. First up, one of the most successful transitions from pro football to pro wrestling, Wahoo McDaniel. One of the toughest and most respected wrestlers of the territory era, Wahoo McDaniel was born Edward Hugh McDaniel on June 19, 1938 in Louisiana. The family relocated to Midland, Texas, where McDaniel rose to prominence as a football player, earning a scholarship to the University of Oklahoma. Playing various positions at OU, McDaniel set a school record that still stands today with a 91-yard punt against Iowa State in 1958. McDaniel was drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers of the American Football League in 1960, but was traded to the Houston Oilers, where he was part of their AFL championship team in 1961. While still active in the AFL, Wahoo began wrestling part-time in Dory Funk Sr.'s Amarillo, Texas promotion, where he emphasized his real-life Choctaw and Chickasaw heritage, but it wasn't the Native American aspect that drew in the fans. McDaniel quickly earned a reputation for being stiff in the ring, using a signature move of a tomahawk chop that could end a match at any moment. There was nothing flashy about McDaniel. Fans believed in him because he fought like a real athlete, and left no doubt that he was a real athlete. His rugged persona made him a fast fan favorite. After retiring from pro football following the 1968 season, McDaniel went into pro wrestling full-time and began traveling to other territories like Dallas, Florida, and the American Wrestling Association. It was in Mid-Atlantic where Wahoo arguably found his greatest success, having a memorable feud with Johnny Valentine over the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship that provided some of the most physical matches of the era. That transitioned into a feud with Ric Flair that centered on the Mid-Atlantic, United States, and NWA World Championship for the better part of the next decade. No matter what promotion McDaniel worked for, his no-nonsense approach and almost fatherly aura made him one of the most popular figures in any territory. Wahoo's willingness to absorb punishment while continuing to fight made him a popular challenger for any opponent. Even as the profession began to emphasize the entertainment aspect, he remained true to his straightforward approach, further earning the respect of fans and wrestlers alike. McDaniel quietly retired in 1996 and lived in Texas until his passing in 2002. Wahoo McDaniel didn't need theatrics to become a legend. His toughness, pride, and unforgettable violent matches locked his legacy in place. When someone thinks of Wahoo, they don't think of bells and whistles or exploding pyrotechnics. They simply think of one tough son of a gun, bloody from his battle in the ring, and refusing to give up. As a babyface fighting Rick Rude, or even as a heel taking on Ricky Steamboat, Wahoo McDaniel cemented his place in wrestling history mixed with grit and determination, and a real toughness that can't be created. Wahoo McDaniel, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. In that tie with Wahoo for 7th place is the first woman elected to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the original Queen of Wrestling, Mildred Burke. A true pioneer in the business, Mildred Burke was front and center in transforming women's pro wrestling into a respected attraction at a time many people in wrestling didn't believe women had a place in the ring. Born in Coffeyville, Kansas in 1915, the youngest of 6 children, Burke grew up in an era where opportunities were very limited for female athletes. Through sheer determination and natural athletic ability, Burke became the biggest female star in pro wrestling and proved she belonged among the profession's elite. All at a time the punches in the ring weren't always pulled. Burke's career took off in the 1930s when she began working with promoter Billy Wolfe, who would later become both her manager and her real-life husband. Despite skepticism from promoters and fans alike, Mildred earned a reputation for toughness and technical skills as she traveled across the United States, wrestling in hundreds of matches. As her popularity grew, she was recognized as the premier women's wrestler of her generation, claiming the inaugural Women's World Championship by defeating Clara Mortensen in 1937. She would dominate women's wrestling with that title for almost 2 decades. Through the 1940s and 1950s, Burke became a true global star as she traveled across North America, Europe, Latin America, and Asia, drawing large crowds wherever she appeared, and rarely suffering a defeat while reportedly wrestling thousands of matches. Burke proved women's wrestling could be both profitable and entertaining, opening the door for countless wrestlers that followed in her footsteps. Women's wrestling was not treated as a novelty during Burke's long reign. It was treated as a legitimate draw for fans. Unfortunately, things outside the ring soured the latter part of Burke's career. A split and divorce from Wolfe resulted in being blacklisted by many promoters aligned with Wolfe, making it difficult to book herself to even defend her world championship. It all led to the infamous shoot match against Wolfe's daughter-in-law June Byers in Atlanta that was declared a no contest by the Georgia Athletic Commission, but the National Wrestling Alliance chose to recognize Byers as champion. Burke continued to defend her championship independently. After founding the World Women's Wrestling Association, Mildred retired from in-ring action in 1956 as one of the most influential figures in wrestling history. Burke left behind a legacy that still resonates today, to the point her story was told on screen in the 2024 film Queen of the Ring. Burke's story is one of courage and determination to succeed in the face of overwhelming odds. Every women's wrestler working today owes something to the path created by Mildred Burke, one of the most important pioneers pro wrestling has ever known. Mildred Burke, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Placing 6th in the poll is another of the former NWA World Champions, the Ultimate Babyface, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Born Richard Henry Blood, Ricky Steamboat was raised in New York before his family moved to Florida when he was in high school. Richard was on the high school wrestling team in both states, being a 2-time state qualifier in New York and a Florida state champion. After graduating, his entry into pro wrestling was a tough one as part of Vern Gagne's famed and infamous training camp, being prepared for the profession by Gagne and the Iron Sheik, leading up to his debut in the American Wrestling Association in 1976. Before long, he was back home in Florida, where promoter Eddie Graham changed the rest of his career. Graham renamed Richard Blood Ricky Steamboat and presented him as a nephew to Sam Steamboat, who was a popular figure in Florida just a few years earlier. Capturing extra attention thanks to the name change, Steamboat thrilled Florida fans with his high-flying style, good looks, and clean-cut persona. As over-the-top personalities were starting to become the norm in pro wrestling, Steamboat proved a high level of in-ring ability could still draw fans. This led to the step that began to cement Steamboat as a superstar as he moved on to the Carolinas. It was in Mid-Atlantic that a polished and experienced Ricky Steamboat came into his own. Keeping the same high-flying but sportsmanlike approach, Steamboat held every major title in Mid-Atlantic as he feuded with the likes of Sergeant Slaughter and was a natural counterpart for a feud with the brash, braggadocious Ric Flair. The Steamboat vs. Flair feud began over the Mid-Atlantic Television Championship and went on to be one of the all-time great feuds in pro wrestling history, finding new life in various promotions over the years and leading to Steamboat winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Flair in 1989. A run in the World Wrestling Federation gave Steamboat the nickname of the Dragon and provided another legendary feud as he and Randy Savage battled over the Intercontinental Championship, with the two having what many consider the best match of WrestleMania 3 when Steamboat won the title. That match was named the Match of the Year by both Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Wrestling Observer, and is regarded as an all-time classic by both fans and people within the business. Unfortunately, behind-the-scenes issues led to Steamboat's abrupt WWF departure. Injuries eventually brought Steamboat's full-time career to an end, but his influence on pro wrestling never faded. Ricky's technical excellence and emotional storytelling made him an unforgettable figure in pro wrestling. In retirement, his mentorship to wrestlers like CM Punk, Chris Jericho, and John Cena have ensured his influence has reached generations of fans that never saw him in the ring. Ricky Steamboat was the ultimate babyface, projecting decency and integrity that was not only part of the gimmick, but part of the man himself. Ricky Steamboat, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. We begin the top 5 in the poll with a heavy flavor of world class and another former NWA World's Champion, the modern-day warrior, Kerry Von Erich. Born in Niagara Falls, New York, Kerry Von Erich grew up Kerry Atkinson in Texas as part of the legendary Von Erich wrestling family with father Fritz, mother Doris, and brothers Kevin, David, Mike, and Chris. A gifted athlete possessing movie star looks and undeniable charisma, Kerry was likely the most popular Von Erich in a family full of popular figures and the cornerstone of world-class championship wrestling. A bona fide global superstar, Kerry reached the kind of popularity reserved for rock star legends in Texas. Before even stepping into the ring, Kerry was making his mark as an athlete, particularly in track and field. Kerry set the 4A high school record for throwing the discus his junior year at Lake Dallas High School and earned a scholarship to the University of Houston. Kerry was chosen as an alternate for the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, but the U.S. boycott of the Games in Moscow, Russia, ended any dreams of Olympic medals. Having already had several matches over the previous 2 years, Kerry became a full-time pro wrestler by the end of 1980 and never looked back. In 1982, the Dallas territory of the NWA rebranded as World Class Championship Wrestling, and Kerry was at the center of the start of its most successful run on Christmas night 1982. That was the night Terry Gordy slammed Kerry's head in the door of a steel cage and sparked one of the most famous feuds in pro wrestling history between the Von Erichs and the Fabulous Freebirds. Kerry and Freebird leader Michael Hayes were at the center of the feud, but Kerry still found room for more rivalries with Gino Fernandez, One Man Gang, Chris Adams, Kamali the Ugandan Giant, and of course, Harley Race and Ric Flair. On May 6, 1984, Kerry reached the pinnacle of his career when he defeated Ric Flair for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship at Texas Stadium in honor of his brother David, who passed away just 3 months earlier. It was the high point of not only Kerry's career, but of the world-class territory, and the culmination of a long battle for a Von Erich to hold the belt. At the time, Kerry was the youngest NWA World's Champion in history at just 24 years old. Kerry was also the last NWA champion to come out of the territories, as the world of pro wrestling was changing. Kerry would also hold the WCWA World Championship when World Class broke away from the NWA, and broadened his fan base with a run in the World Wrestling Federation, where he won the Intercontinental Championship, but the in-ring accomplishments seem minuscule compared to what we know now. Kerry lost part of his right foot in a motorcycle accident and wrestled the last several years of his career with a prosthetic. Though it would all lead to a sad ending, it's a prime example of Kerry's talent and determination, and show why he is still one of the most beloved stars of his generation. Kerry Von Erich, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. In 4th place in the voting is our second inductee, primarily known as a manager, Bobby the Brain, or is it the Weasel, Heenan. Regarded by fans and people in the industry as the greatest manager in professional wrestling history, Bobby the Brain Heenan was born Raymond Lewis Heenan on November 1st, 1944 in Chicago, Illinois, and grew up a fan of pro wrestling. Heenan started at the bottom of the profession, carrying jackets and bags for wrestlers and working in the concession stand. When a wrestler didn't show up for a card, Heenan suddenly found himself in the ring with no formal training. Bobby was paid $5 for his efforts and immediately said he couldn't wait to do it again. Officially breaking into the business in Dick the Bruiser's Indianapolis-based World Wrestling Association, Bobby was billed as Pretty Boy Bobby Heenan and worked as both a wrestler and manager. Heenan's sharp tongue and natural charisma made him impossible to ignore, and the powers that be were impressed with the way he physically handled his role as a manager. Meanwhile, Bobby spent his time behind the scenes learning every aspect of the business while changing the bar for managers in front of the crowd. It wasn't long before a bigger stage was calling. Moving on to the American Wrestling Association, Heenan rose to prominence as he managed some of the era's most feared competitors and took on the nickname of the Brain. Over the years, his stable included names like Ray Stevens, Blackjack Mulligan, Blackjack Lanza, and longtime AWA World Champion Nick Bockwinkel. Always finding a way to manipulate referees, distract opponents, and tilt the advantage in favor of his heel wrestlers, Heenan quickly became the figure fans loved to hate. The highlight of most AWA shows was often Heenan's verbal battles with people in the crowd. Arriving in the World Wrestling Federation in 1984, Heenan cemented his legacy with the Heenan family stable that included legends like Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig, Ric Flair, Harley Race, and Andre the Giant over the years. Heenan's rivalry with Hulk Hogan became a defining storyline of the 1980s in the WWF, something that would continue to linger around Heenan even after he left the WWF for World Championship Wrestling later in his career. Heenan, being the Elmer Fudd to Hogan's Bugs Bunny, always left fans satisfied, and Bobby played his part perfectly. Making the transition from manager to commentator, Heenan's humor and timing earned him a whole new generation of fans. His on-air partnership with Gorilla Monsoon created some of the most entertaining broadcasts in pro wrestling history as they mixed comedy with serious storytelling in a way that is still influencing commentators today. Moving to WCW in 1994, Heenan continued to excel behind the microphone and offer insight only a seasoned pro could offer. Despite battling throat cancer later in life, Heenan never lost his passion for pro wrestling as he continued to make personal appearances at conventions until he passed in 2017. Bobby Heenan, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Finishing third in the poll is our second Von Erich of 2026 and third overall in the Hall of Fame, the Golden Warrior, Kevin Von Erich. The eldest of wrestling's Von Erich brothers, Kevin began his career in 1976 as what he called a summer job, as he was still attending North Texas State University. After dreams of a pro football career faded away after knee surgery, Kevin became a full-time pro wrestler in 1978 and joined younger brother David, who had begun his career a year earlier. That same year, Kevin and David won their first championship together when they defeated Killer Tim Brooks and Leroy Brown for the NWA Texas Tag Team Championship, a title they held for 126 days in their first reign. Kevin went on to hold various singles titles, most notably being a 5-time American Heavyweight Champion and holding the Missouri Heavyweight Championship. Kevin was involved in several feuds in his career with the likes of Checkmate, Killer Khan, and Chris Adams, but of course you can't talk about any of the Von Erichs without mentioning the brothers' feud against the Fabulous Freebirds, Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts. But it was a trip to Georgia that quietly cemented Kevin's place in the formation of what would become World-Class Championship Wrestling. During a short run in Georgia in 1981, Kevin found himself tagging with a then babyface Michael Hayes, as Hayes was feuding with Terry Gordy and Gordy's new tag partner Jimmy Snuka. It was a short stint as part of a long feud, but Von Erich came away with new ideas to take back to Dallas. Kevin liked the way Hayes used rock music as part of his entrance, and wanted to take that and incorporate some of his own ideas. Convincing Father Fritz to install a new sound system at the Sportatorium, it was the beginning of heavy use of entrance music in Dallas that became a signature of a night at the matches. Of course, Kevin didn't really need that addition to cement his place in world class, as it's actually Kevin applying the Von Erich Iron Claw to Genichiro Tenryu on the World Class logo. Later, when World Class broke away from the NWA and became the World Class Wrestling Association, Kevin was just the fourth person to hold the WCWA World Heavyweight Championship and had the longest single title reign at 313 days. Kevin was the only wrestler to see World Class through from its formation in the early 1980s to its eventual quiet end less than a decade later, all the while experiencing the much publicized tragedies that surrounded both the organization and Kevin personally. After brief runs and smaller promotions, Kevin retired in 1995. After years out of the spotlight and concerns with public opinion, Kevin slowly started making public appearances again and played a hands-on role when his sons Ross and Marshall began their pro wrestling careers in the early 2010s. Kevin even made his way back into the ring, tagging with Ross and Marshall in a 6-man tag match in Israel in July 2017. Remembered for his bare feet and his combination of a high-flying style coupled with reckless abandon, Kevin has finally settled into his role as a legend in the business, as well as the patriarch of a legendary family. Kevin Von Erich, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Finishing second in the 2026 poll is the third Von Erich to go in this year, the Yellow Rose of Texas, David Von Erich. David Von Erich was one of pro wrestling's brightest young stars of the early 1980s and a central figure in world-class championship wrestling. Debuting in 1977, David already possessed the athletic ability to succeed in wrestling and quickly developed the charisma and confidence to be a main event star in any promotion in the United States. Fans admired his toughness, and people within the industry recognized him as a star with a great mind for the business. The ladder to success did start in his father's promotion in Dallas as part of the NWA. His first championship was the Texas Tag Team Championship, which he won with his older brother Kevin, and he would be part of the World 6-Man Tag Team Championship with Kevin and younger brother Kerry, but the title most commonly associated with David is the Texas Heavyweight Championship. David held the Texas title 8 times in his short career, while feuding with the likes of Bruiser Brody, Gino Hernandez, Mark Lewin, and Jimmy Garvin. David's title reigns were at the heart of world class, as it became the hottest territory in the country. While a solid babyface in Texas as part of the legendary Von Erich family, David had his sights set on the NWA World's Championship, which led to a heel run in Florida in the early 1980s, as he aligned with Dory Funk Jr. In Florida, he feuded with Jack and Jerry Briscoe, Skip Young, and Dusty Rhodes, as he showed he could be the good guy or the bad guy in the ring. Upon returning from Florida, David played his part in carrying the world-class torch with brothers Kevin and Kerry, passed to them after Father Fritz retired in June 1982. Set to win the NWA World title from Ric Flair in 1984, David's life was tragically cut short when he passed away while on tour in Japan in February. The sudden loss of one of wrestling's brightest stars sent shockwaves through the industry and left behind questions of what if that still linger among wrestling fans today. As a tribute to David, brother Kerry won the NWA World Championship from Flair at what was renamed the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions in May 1984. All of it happening literally months before the industry began changing forever as the territories were fading away. Although his career was cut short, David's legacy continues to endure. David is remembered as a fierce competitor with talent and determination that many believe would have changed history had he lived. His influence can still be seen by his work and in the lasting popularity of the Von Erich family. Historically speaking, David was only here for a moment, but is still remembered by people in and out of the business as an excellent worker that was destined for legend status. More than 4 decades later, David is one of the most beloved and respected figures in pro wrestling. David Von Erich, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And finally, the top vote recipient in a tightly contested race for the class of 2026, known as Super Beast in Japan, King Kong in the AWA, and simply as Frank at home, Bruiser Brody. Born in Pennsylvania and raised in Michigan, Frank Goodish had his sights set on a pro football career, which eventually led to him playing at West Texas State University in Canyon, Texas. West Texas was also Frank's introduction to pro wrestling, when his teammate Terry Funk invited him to matches at his father's promotion in Amarillo. Football was still Frank's dream, but after a chance with the Washington Redskins didn't work out, Frank found himself in San Antonio working on a loading dock. While working at a gym, Goodish met Joe Bednarski, who wrestling fans know as Ivan Putski. And Putski introduced Frank to Dallas promoter Fritz Von Erich, who got Frank started in the business. It wouldn't take long for Goodish to start making a name for himself with his intimidating appearance. Successful runs in tri-state, western states, and Florida led to a career-defining run in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, where he was brought in as the unstoppable monster to challenge Bruno Sammartino for the WWF Championship. WWF head Vince McMahon Sr. not only gave Frank his biggest push, he gave him a name he would use the rest of his career: Bruiser Brody. Becoming a traveling act, Bruiser Brody rarely let the grass grow under his feet as he became a superstar, appearing in every major promotion in the United States, and becoming especially popular in Japan. Brody's hard-hitting style and larger-than-life personality made him arguably the biggest foreign star in Japan, with his matches often featuring wild fights throughout the arena. In Japan and the US, Brody had legendary matches against Abdullah the Butcher, Giant Baba, Kamala Ugandan Giant, and Dusty Rhodes, among many others. Outside the ring, Brody earned a reputation for being highly intelligent and fiercely independent. Brody was always careful to protect his gimmick and was known to stand up to promoters when he felt he was being treated unfairly. While some people in the business labeled him as difficult to work with, others respected him for refusing to be taken advantage of at a time wrestlers had very little leverage. Seeing it as a positive or a negative, it certainly made Brody a unique figure in the industry at a time many were unwilling to challenge unwritten rules. Brody's legacy continues to influence generations of wrestlers who admire his intensity, realism, and fearless approach to performing in the ring. Many historians consider him one of the greatest big men in the history of pro wrestling, with his combined athleticism, charisma, and unmatched presence. Many wonder how much bigger he would be if his career had lasted longer. As it is, decades after his passing, Bruiser Brody is one of the most recognizable and respected names in professional wrestling, and is remembered as a true legend. Bruiser Brody, welcome to YouTube's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And those are our inductees for the class of 2026. They joined names like Ric Flair, Harley Race, Bruno Sammartino, Nick Bockwinkel, Gorgeous George, Lou Thez, and every other inductee from 2025. I'd like to thank all of those who voted, and thank you for the great selection of true legends that were inducted this year. If there was a name you were hoping to see this year that didn't make it, well, there is always next year. There were a lot of people that just missed being inducted. The voting was very close. Like last year, I will post something in the community section later on, giving something of a rundown of how the votes fell for those that didn't make it in. And I'm already looking forward to 2027. So again, thank you for voting. Thank you for watching. Congratulations to all those who were inducted. If you haven't already, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, not necessarily in that order. And I will see you next time.